understanding what weight class could be best for an individual as well. I think that could be helped by being able to see where's your percentile ranking based on your weight class. And if you're seeing somebody's really struggling in their weight class to be strong enough, maybe is that one where they need to be down, or maybe do we need to look at some of the nutrition and recovery aspects or modifying the program to help them maximize the return on investment for training and maximize their muscle mass as well.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, how are you?
It's my pleasure to have you on Evidence Strong Show. If you could briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Zack Gillen. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Kinesiology at Mississippi State University. I'm in my 6th year there, and I currently direct the Resistance Exercise Performance Lab, where we study a lot of different strength and conditioning principles, both as it relates to athletes, but then just your normal everyday individual, young kids to older adults, and how we can best maximize training. I'm originally actually from Texas and did my bachelor's and master's degree in exercise physiology at Midwestern State University. Give them a shout out. Their men's soccer team just won the national championship. I was at a youth strength and conditioning company in Frisco, Texas called DX3 Athlete for about a year. And then I went and did my PhD at the University of Nebraska. And when I graduated, was able to come down here to Starkville, Mississippi, and me and my wife have been here ever since.
Awesome. So you traveled a lot, huge experience. Out of the study we will be talking about today, and the study is percentile rankings and normalization of performance for youth international weightlifting Federation World Championships competitors. That's a mouthful, but you took a huge amount of data and tried to summarize it in a usable way. So why this study?
So one other thing, like I said, I've had a passion for Olympic weightlifting. Coached people to use weightlifting, used it in my own training. I believe it's very important, very very good training modality for most individuals, whether athlete or non-athlete. I can help with strength, with mobility, range of motion, joint health, everything like that. And so a lot of as I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the research that we do in the lab is related to how do we maximize return on investment for training. Primarily, we focus on strength and power training, whether it be your traditional lifts, plyometrics, or Olympic weightlifting. And so this study is interesting because most of the studies we do, we have our lab participants come into the lab and we collect data right there. What I actually did for this study is I looked up the International Weightlifting Federation database and pulled the data from there. So a lot of our different lifts, or just really tests in general, vertical jump, 1.5 mile run, your squats, everything like that, you have percentile rankings to where if I'm training, I know my age category, male or female, I can see where do I line up in terms of my percentile ranking. Am I at the higher percentile, lower percentile, somewhere in the middle? But we don't have as much of that available for the snatch and the clean and jerk and the total combined. So I was interested in seeing, all right, can we pull a lot of this data and actually compile it to develop percentile rankings so that those who are training can kind of know where they're at. Coaches and athletes can use it to know, where am I at? Am I at a good strength for my weight class? Am I at a good strength? And for my age, am I at a good strength? And so I would like for that to be, because you see Olympic weightlifting more and more used by everyone over the last probably 10, 15 years. I've seen it implemented a lot more beyond just with athletes, and more people are competing in Olympic weightlifting. So I think it's good to know, okay, where am I at? Am I at a good percentile ranking? Is my snatch good? Am I clean and jerk bad, or vice versa? Where could I actually improve a little bit more? And one of the other things we did with this study too was not just look at the percentile ranking of the raw total, but looked at it, everything normalized for body mass as well, because obviously those who are heavier, you can just look at records, right? Heavier weight classes lift more because they have more muscle mass. They're able to move more weight because of that additional muscle mass. So I wanted to look at it not just for the raw score, but also based on your body weight, what you're weighing in at. Are you at a good percentile ranking? What could you improve upon? Or even to where maybe people could figure out, is this the right weight class for me, where I can be highly competitive, or would I be better down a weight class, up a weight class, whatever it might be?
Awesome. So you mentioned a little bit that you took the data from the IWF website. How big of an effort was it? And what kind of data did you pull out?
So I ended up pulling up for this one. We did I did the most recent few years of competition, specifically since they changed the weight class in, I believe it's 2018. So I used data from 2019, 21, 22, and 2023. I had pulled this data actually before the 2024 World Championship. For this study, I specifically took World Championships. I've seen some other studies recently, some coming out looking at different competitions as well, using similar type of methods of pulling some of those large data sets. And how I ended up deciding, if some people were competing year to year, I just took the entire, so for, 2019, I skipped over 2020 because of COVID, so didn't have a whole lot to go off of that year. But for 2019 was the furthest back I went for this one. Just pulled all that data. Then I came to 2021, pulled all that data. For this, I did not look at specifically if this person competed over here. How did they do in 2021 as well? Although that is another research question I've been interested in looking at is, so if we get similarities of these people, these individuals at different competitions, tracking some of those changes over time for different groups of people, different weight classes, seeing if individuals are shifting in their weight class one way or the other, what that's doing to their snaps, their clean and jerk, and their total. But for this one, I didn't actually eliminate people if it was, hey, they competed here, so I'm not going to use them over in 2021 or 22. I left them in that data set just so I could get a nice large compilation of data, which for this one, we had 812 records between the boys and girls as well. So some of those were repeated, some were unique to each competition.
And what age bracket are we talking about?
So for this one, I specifically did the youth category, so it's 13 to 17 years of age. Because when you're trying to create these reference normative values, if I take 50 people, that's not enough to really create normative values. But when I had several hundred of them, that becomes very valuable from a statistical side of things. And I was glad that, I'm very happy that it's publicly available online, because with this specifically in kids, you see youth are using Olympic weightlifting a lot more. When I've coached youth, I've taught them a snatch and clean and jerk, and I think it's good, like you were saying, for them to know where am I stacking up, even if they're not. It could just be somebody they're not competing in Olympic weightlifting, but they're using it in their programming, and so wanting to see, are they actually progressing very well? How does their strength stack up against other youth who are competing at a high level? But I have a passion for promoting this type of lifting as well in that youth age category.
Let's talk about what type of analysis you decided to do.
So I use a statistical program called SPSS. So creating the normative values is pretty easy in that statistical software program. I put what I want in there and it spit it back out for me. One of the unique things we did with this one, like I said, we looked at the influence of body mass on the actual lifts, on snatch, clean, and jerk, and the total. So with weightlifting, we know they have the Sinclair coefficient, which is what is used to determine, based on your total, how are you based on your body mass, to try to normalize that out to get best overall, which seems, effective, but that works for the total, not for the snatch and clean and jerk individually. So one of the methods we employed in this one, and I looked at, was something called allometric scaling. And allometric scaling is basically how we typically have done normalization in terms of taking my weight, dividing it by my body mass. Traditional ratio scaling normalization. Well, that ratio scaling makes the assumption that there is a linear relationship between both variables. So if I increase 5 kilograms of body mass, my snatch or my clean and jerk will increase X amount as well. Inherently linear relationship. So one of the things I did to check for that, to see is ratio scaling actually appropriate for this, was I did what's called polynomial regression analysis to see the relationship between snatch and body weight, clean and jerk body weight total combined, and body weight. And it's not a linear relationship. You get some quadratic, some cubic relationships, meaning I can't just assume that if my body weight goes up X amount, that my lift will go up X amount. And so, that's actually true of a lot of things in the exercise science, in the lifting field, whether it be powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, or any other lift out there. It's not as clean cut as, if you increase this many pounds of muscle mass, you'll increase this many pounds in your lift. It would be nice if that were true, but it's not quite that clean cut. And so, actually, one of my doctoral advisor at Nebraska, Dr. Joel Kramer, he had introduced me to allometric scaling, and one of the first papers I did during my doctorate, where instead of taking weight divided by body mass, you actually create an allometric parameter where I'll take my lift and then I can raise it to that allometric parameter. So it's kind of correcting for the fact that it's not a linear relationship between those two. And there's a lot of different scientific fields that use that, and it's become more and more common in the exercise science and kinesiology field just because things are not as clear cut as increase a certain number of pounds of muscle and you increase a certain number of pounds with your lifts either. So that was one of the things we also want to introduce in this is give something beyond just the Sinclair coefficient, but we can give, hey, here are these, one of the tables on here, I know we had the allometric parameters where if somebody were to want to, they can simply use those to see are they in a good strength for their weight, their current body weight, and in their weight category as well. The table is actually the table 8 on there, and it has an allometric parameter you'll see for boys, for girls, for the snatch, for the clean and jerk, and for the total lift. I need to take the lift I did, and then I just raise it to that allometric parameter. So instead of, squaring the number, you just replace that with, whatever the parameter is. So for example, if I was looking at the snatch in boys, the allometric parameter was 0.5636, which means I would take their snatch and raise it to 0.5636, and that'll give me my allometrically scaled lift. And can do the same for the clean and jerk, for the total, for boys, and for girls as well.
And then you can go with the number you receive, you can go straight to the other tables you have in the paper to see where on the percentile they would be placing with this lift.
Correct. And so if you look at table 6, table 6, for example, has allometrically scaled total. And so I could see, okay, based on my weight category, where is my allometrically scaled number at? And so if you actually look at it's got the formula in, on page 3 in this one where it's got the allometrically scaled performance measure is I take my performance measure divided by my body mass raised to that parameter, and then you'll get a number somewhere, hopefully on that table or looking somewhat similar to that table as well. So all you have to do is plug into that formula listed on page 3 in there. Your snatch, for example, snatch divided by body mass raised to the allometric parameter gives you an allometrically scaled score. Because one of the things is, and theoretically similar to the Sinclair coefficient, it wouldn't be the same number every single year. That coefficient, changes based on what the world record is as well. And so this would need, here in a couple of years, you probably need some more updating with this, but at the very least, it takes a snapshot right here in time of how I can use this to look beyond just that Sinclair normalization, beyond just taking my lift and dividing it by my current body mass. So hopefully it gets a little bit more of a pinpoint accuracy on how good is your strength based on your body mass.
Do you think that the cuts some lifters do between competitions like World Championship, where the medals and the placings are very important, possibly for their career, do you think that this would influence the scaling and the totals?
Maybe it possibly could. So, with cuts and weightlifting, powerlifting, wrestling, or sports that you see a lot of weight cuts in those. And I always tell people be cautious with that because a lot of those last second cuts is really you're losing water weight. You're not losing fat or anything like that because it's too small of a time frame you're trying to weight cut in. And so you can potentially put yourself in more of a dehydrated state, especially if, I have to make weight in the morning, which thankfully it's in the morning. So if you don't lift till later in the day, okay, don't eat breakfast or anything, go in and then go about your normal day. But at the same time, I don't want to put myself in a compromised state. If I'm dehydrated, my performance is naturally going to be down. Maybe I can still do as good as I need to, but then you have to ask, am I willing to risk that performance decline with being in more of a compromised state? And so hopefully, studies like this where we had these normative reference values can help people in the preparation to where you don't have to go on a cut right beforehand. I usually recommend to people, and when you talk about people at world championships and Olympics, it's a little different than just normal person in the gym or even doing amateur competitions. But I usually would recommend find a weight class where you can perform optimally in, and hopefully you can use some of these data sets and these normative values to see, am I at a good competition strength, but also that you feel comfortable in terms of I don't feel like I'm having to starve myself or dehydrate myself, or I don't feel like I'm having to really pack in the calories to try to be at the upper end of that weight class to maximize my muscle mass. I want people to be at a good performance weight, but also understand you start to dip into some of the health implications. Make sure you're at a good, body health weight as well, because that's also going to, influence the psychological component, too. So, I hope, these types of data sets can help people in that preparation. Only time will tell with that.
Okay, are we ready to look into the results? We could compare what differences have you found for sexes and for weight classes, and maybe some other interesting findings you would have.
Yes. Yeah. So the results, heavier weight classes lifted more than the lighter weight classes. Not very surprising there. And the boys tended to be stronger than the girls. If you also look at that age category, 13 to 17, during that pubertal window, that's not, when you go to prepubertal kids, it's usually similar strength. They're at that pubertal time, boys were stronger than girls. So those are some of the unsurprising results. But when we look at whether it be the allometrically scaled, snatch, clean, and jerk in total, or even just the Sinclair for the total, what we found was typically boys were stronger than girls when correcting for body mass. The difference wasn't quite as large, but it was still there. But for both boys and girls, we found those middle weight classes were the strongest pound for pound compared to the upper and lower end weight classes. Part of it is you have more individuals in those weight classes as well than at the upper and lower ends of the spectrum. But the results really showed, like I said, boys are stronger than girls, which wasn't surprising. For the raw totals and snatch and clean and jerk, heavier lifters stronger. But when you actually correct for body mass, with allometric scaling or with Sinclair coefficient, those middle weight classes were the strongest pound for pound.
Anything extra we can pull out of the data?
Well, a couple of things that people can pull out beyond just like looking at the results and interpreting those. I'd say some of the things with the results is, one, coaches and athletes have some data sets to some normative values to use now, right? Whereas in Olympic weightlifting, especially in kids, we don't have a whole lot of normative values. And so those comparisons were part of it. But my initial idea behind this was we need some normative reference values, some published standards, not just if somebody pulls the data and throws it up on the internet is good, but we like to also see things scientific, published standards that we have out here. Those are always good to go back to. So one, we have something to use now for the raw scores, the absolute weight lifted, for your Sinclair coefficient corrected weight lifted, and then for those allometrically scaled, so body mass corrected weights lifted. So that'd be one of the big results. I hope that has a practical aspect to it of you don't even need to know any of the math or anything behind it all. You can just pull up the table, and if I want to know, hey, how am I based on my allometrically scaled snatch? Well, I scroll up in the statistical analysis paragraph. It's got that formula. If I know their raw score, I take that, and then I take their body mass. I take raw weight lifted divided by body mass raised to that allometric parameter, which is down there in the last table. Now I have my allometrically scaled score. Or if a coach doesn't care to do that, they can still look at just the raw. Here's your snatch, your clean and jerk, your total. Or the IWF website actually has you can calculate their Sinclair coefficient right there on the website. So if you don't even care to do the allometric scaling, hopefully there's something that a coach and an athlete can still take away from this.
So let's just clarify. I didn't want to minimize the huge amount of work and the outcome that are the tables with normative values. This is the goal of the paper. There's no doubt about it. Now, the additional plus of the analysis you have done is that the coaches are not limited to only comparing the total. There may be some other elements, maybe injury, maybe a lifter comes with some deficiencies in mobility and it will take time to get them where they have to be. But for example, in jerk, but for snatch and clean, they are pretty all right, and or the other combination. But they have one lift that actually the coach thinks, oh, that could be a reliable measure or valid measure of their performance, but it's not a total. So it's very hard to, well, do I guess the clean and jerk now? Or
Right.
no, you actually provided the data. They can scale the snatch, let's say, to the body weight of the athlete, convert it into a score and compare. If they don't want to do it, I think there are tables for raw data too.
Yeah.
For the snatch. So they can actually just take the snatch as it is in kilograms and see where in terms of this huge data set of elite lifters, how their lifter is comparing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like I said, if they don't care to go through any of the math behind it, you just want to know, hey, where's my snatch or my clean and jerk at? Just look at the table. If you know what their body weight is, their weight class, you can just find with the percentile ranking, go over to their weight class, you know right where you're at.
Awesome. All right, so let's bring it all together. What would be the message for coaches from a study?
The message for coaches is one, if you need to know if an athlete is making good progress on their strength based on their weight class, whether it be for their just raw, snatch, clean and jerk or total, you can use these data. If you want to scale it to the body mass or for the total, you can use the Sinclair coefficient. You have that capability here for boys and for girls and across all of the weight class categories there. And we did use all the IWF weight class categories. I know for the Olympics, they do scale it down a few weight classes. So it has everything that would be on an international competition and most of our national competitions too that I've been a part of. One of the things as well is knowing that understanding what weight class could be best for an individual as well. I think that could be helped by being able to see where's your percentile ranking based on your weight class. And if you're seeing somebody's really struggling in their weight class, to be strong enough, maybe is that one where they need to be down, or maybe do we need to look at some of the nutrition and recovery aspects or modifying the program to help them maximize the return on investment for training and maximize their muscle mass as well. And another thing too, it's take away from this, and we've had other studies where we did it of even when we corrected for body mass, the boys were stronger than the girls. Usually we all think it's because of muscle, which is true. Muscle mass, it makes a big difference between boys and girls, especially like I said, in that 13 to 17 category, pubertal development starts to really differ between boys and girls. But that also speaks to some of the complexity we talked about earlier of there's a lot of other things going on in the body during growth and development that are differentiating strength between boys and girls, even when I correct for body mass. And so, those are other things that really, I guess that's the kind of a take home for any researchers who are listening to this. Some of the things that I think we need to look at a little bit more, not even just body mass, but let's look at actual composition, your muscle mass, some of the neural development and neuromuscular changes. I think we as researchers need to do our due diligence so that we can help coaches out there better know how can I maximize my training for my athletes. But I hope, there are people out there, athletes and coaches, who at the bare minimum can use this to see, hey, am I at a good strength for my weight class? Are my athletes progressing really well? Do I need to maybe take a look at this and maybe that'll spark, hey, maybe I can modify my program, or even look at, is this athlete in the right weight class based on their strength? And especially if they're really, really struggling in that, maybe it's drop down a weight class, maybe it's bump up a weight class. Maybe it's stay where you're at, and let's maybe look at the nutritional aspect to make sure you're getting, plenty of, protein and plenty of recovery, and how's your sleep doing, things like that as well. So I hope there can be some takeaway of, there's a lot of different things people could gather from this. This is an elite level competitors. So I would say if you're working with very amateur level competitors, and like I said, there is actually one that came out in 2024 that has adult values as well. If I'm working with amateur competitors, don't necessarily expect them to right off the bat be at the level of international worlds championship competitors, but it at least gives you a gauge to see how are they stacking up against the best of the best as well. But don't expect them to be right there if they're just starting off with Olympic weightlifting. So you can use this to progress them over time or see how they're changing over time.
Sometimes, especially with young lifters, the important aspect is also the rate of progression. So they may start a little bit lower, but because they are progressing pretty fast and they are able to sustain the progress. Sometimes athletes who are progressing really well as youth athletes or juniors are not necessarily able to get to the elite level in seniors where it's required for many reasons. But I would caution coaches to not use the tables in a way that is limiting the athlete's potential. So saying, oh, they are not meeting the percentiles of elite world championship participants, so there's no point putting effort into them.
Right. I would say to remember, elite level athletes in any sport, they're percentage of a percentage of the population, right? Most people are not gonna be a world's level competitors. If I'm working with somebody, are they progressing in a positive trajectory? Or do they keep getting, is their technique getting better? I always say, especially in kids, first, let's get the technique down, and then we can worry more about adding some more weight on the barbell. Are they progressing continuously? And if they're starting to slow down their progress, or, a lot of people hit a plateau, that's where do I need to, revisit the training program, tweak a few things here and there. One of the things I've really tried to focus is speaking people on is also, let's not ignore the recovery aspect of it as well. Like, you were mentioning earlier with people, you never know what's going on in life. If you're going through a rough stretch of life, you're not sleeping as well, your nutrition's down, that could answer why you're hitting a plateau right there. So maybe it's a keep training, but I also understand I might not see as much progress because of what's going on in your personal life as well. And those are important things and important issues that people need to deal with and be able to handle. But don't look at this and be disappointed while they're not at the elite level. Most coaches, you work with athletes who aren't getting to the Olympics or the World Championships level. That does not mean your athletes are not important, right? They're just as important as that upper echelon of athlete to coach and to properly train and design those programs or monitor their progress so that they, because just a kid seeing themselves get stronger over time, that can do a lot for their confidence and for their just health and well-being for the long term as well. So whether they're going to, see these elite level numbers or not, doesn't matter as much as, are they progressing? Are they getting better? Are they seeing themselves get better as well, which is very, very important from a psychological standpoint too. My job as a coach, yes, is to get them better for the sport. But like you said, it teaches them some life skills. It teaches them some discipline, some toughness, because, we all know life will have its challenges. And if I can learn some of that discipline and toughness through how I'm training my body, it can carry over into how I'm able to handle things in life. And it's important for kids to get that exposure as well. Whether they're playing a sport or just in the gym working out and training, it gives them some of those skills that hopefully do carry over for them.
I agree, 100%. I usually finish with two questions. And the first one is, which one is your favorite, snatch or clean and jerk?
Clean and jerk for me. I used to not like the snatch as much. Once I finally figured out the technique, I like it better, but I'm more of a clean and jerk fan.
I respect that. All right. And the last question is, where people can find you if they want to be up to date with your research or maybe ask a question.
Yeah. So one, you can always try to update on our Department of Kinesiology website, kinesiology.msstate.edu. Try to usually every semester update with some of the recent publications we've had. You can also find me, Zack Gillen, on LinkedIn. That's probably where I will post the most on research in the professional side of my life, whether it be new articles or students out at conferences presenting research. Also on Instagram, I'll share some of it as well. My Instagram handle is at ZM Gillen. So ZM is in Michael and then Gillen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach, for today. It was a pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much.